Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayet. All right. Jayam. You remember that Jaya is one of the names for Mahabharata? Jayamudirayet. Now, the teachings of the Mahabharata are going to be taught. We come to a new section. You know that these sections we're also putting up on our website if you want to have a reference to that, if you want these slides. The next section is really quite delightful. The style in the Mahabharata, and also widely used in the Puranas, is to teach us spiritual principles through various stories. And some of the stories are really wild, to use the American expression, interesting stories, unusual stories. By means of these often strange stories, in that context, we get a lot of spiritual instruction. While the Pandavas were in exile in the forest, they met all kinds of strange characters. And in the context of meeting these strange characters, many profound spiritual teachings were unfolded. And that explains the section we're about to see. The section in which the main character is Ajagara. Aja means goat. Gara means one who eats. Imagine a snake large enough to eat a baby, not a full-grown goat, a baby goat. A snake large enough to eat a baby goat is an Ajagara, commonly known as cobra. So this is the story. The story is actually, and the strangeness of the story is this Ajagara is no ordinary snake, as you might guess, but is actually an ancient rishi, Devarshi, really, Rajarshi is the term. He was a king, and he was very wise. So he was a Rajarshi, and his name was Nahusha. Nahusha we're back from the Pandavas maybe a couple dozen generations. If you go back and back and back and back, many, many generations, you come to this great king, Nahusha, who he was very wise, but he had as many, and I won't say many, some wise people have a problem with pride. They become so wise and they become filled with pride because of their wisdom. Anyway, we need to give a little bit of the background story here. So very briefly, Nahusha was a king. He was also a rishi. He was very wise. And he was really committed to doing rituals for the sake of accumulating punya karma. He did, to do Ashwamedha Yaga is a very elaborate ritual. He did it 100 times. So somehow, King Nahusha did 100 Ashwamedha Yagas. And apparently, at least according to the stories, is that made him qualified to become Indra in the next cycle of creation. And that's how significant those rituals were. So he is thinking, hey, I now have the qualification to be the next Indra. And his pride starts to build. Of course, the existing Indra is still there. He's somehow, due to the complexity of the story, he's kind of out of the picture temporarily. And Nahusha is kind of like the stand-in Indra, temporarily, because of his qualification, having done 100 Ashwamedha Yagas. now he's got a real problem, because the real Indra is out of the picture. He is kind of the pratinidhi Indra, the stand-in Indra, and he turns, and since the real Indra is not around, he turns his attention to Indra's wife, Indrani. And he says, well, if the real Indra is not around, and if I'm qualified to be Indra, then maybe she should be with me. Well, according to the story, she didn't think that was a very good idea. So he approached her, and then she had a plan to deter him, a plan that would kind of spell his doom. She was very clever, and she knew his pride, and she knew that his pride could doom him. So she said, if you're going to come to me, you have to come. I'm Indrani. I'm the wife of Indra. You can't just come. You have to come on a golden palanquin with great brahmanas bearing the palanquin. And he said, no problem. I'll make those arrangements. So he got the palanquin. He got these great brahmanas to lift and carry the palanquin. He got into this palanquin, Nahusha, and they're going along to Indrani, Indra's wife. And they're not going very fast. They're brahmanas, they're not really strong. So they're going a little slowly. And he says, come on, go fast, go fast. He's in a hurry to see this Indrani. Go fast. And they're not in any hurry, so they're kind of going slowly. And Nahusha gets increasingly agitated because they're not going fast. And in the palanquin, with his feet, he kicks one of the brahmanas. The brahmana whose name happens to be the great Rishi Agastya. Wrong. So he kicks this Agastya as this great Rishi, as they're going along. And then he's in his agitation, he says, go. But of course he speaks in Sanskrit. One of the dhatus, roots for go, is srip. And if you want to turn it into a command, like in Hindi, you say chalo. So he said, sarpa. Sarpa is the root to go in the imperative mood, as a command. Sarpa. It's also a common word for a snake. So anyway, after kicking Agastya, and after saying sarpa, go, finally this Agastya is fed up. He turns to Nahusha and says, this won't do. He curses Nahusha. Since you said sarpa, you are cursed to become a snake. And that's the story. So look at this. He was qualified to be the next Indra. And he ends up as a snake because of his pride. Anyway, so this is the Ajagara, who, in our story, is going to enter into a lengthy dialogue with Yuddhishthira. And then you have to see, what role does Bhima have to play in the story. We will see all of that as we proceed. As we go into this, what we're going to do is, where it's just story, we're going to go through the verses quite quickly, because there's quite a bit of story. But when we get to important teachings, we'll definitely slow down. So we'll go fast through the story, and then slow down for the teachings. All right. So let us begin with our narration. Vaishampano vacha, Vaishampana, Yadrichaya dhanurpanir, Yadrichaya dhanushpanir, Baddha khadgo vrako daraha, Baddha khadgo vrako, Dadarsha tadvanam ramyam, Dadarsha tadvanam, Deva Gandharva Sevitam, Deva Gandharva Sevitam. Vaishampayana, of course, is narrating all of this to King Janamejaya, and he narrates this next part. By the way, just to get the context, so we are still in the Aranyaka Parva, Remember, they're in that forest for 12 years, so that's why we have 299 chapters in that Aranya Parva, and we're now in a section which encompasses chapters 175 to 178. And here, Vaishampayana narrates what's going on. He narrates what Bhima is doing. And he says that Bhima, who in the second line is called Vrikodara. Vrikodara is a common name for Bhima. It has an interesting meaning. Bhima we know as that big, fierce Pandava. And when you get the idea of big, sometimes in our minds comes the idea of this kind of bigness. Well, look at this name. Vrika is wolf. Udara, stomach. One who has the belly of a wolf is Vrikodara. And you can imagine the belly of like a dog. Dogs don't get really fat like that. Usually their stomachs are small. So the one who has the belly of a wolf is Vrikodara. So please don't if you have the image of Bhima being fat, you should get rid of that image. Powerful. Extremely powerful, absolutely not fat, as this name implies. So what did he do, Vrikodara? He was also Dhanushpanihi. He had a bow in his hand. He was Baddha Khadgaha. He had his mace in his hand. And he was Yadrichaya. He was wandering around at will in the forest. He was wandering in the forest. And Dadarsha, he saw Tadvaram, a forest, a Ramyam, very beautiful forest, portion of that forest, which was Deva Gandharva Sevitam, a portion of the forest in which there were many Devas, gods, and Gandharva, celestial beings, who were Sevitam, who were living in that part of the forest. And, I flipped my page too quickly. And Sadadarsha Mahakayam Sadadarsha Maha Bhujangam Lo Maharshanam Bhujangam Lo Giri Durge Samhapannam Giri Durge Kayena Vritya Kandaram Kayena Saha, he, Bhima. What did he do? Dadarsha, he saw. What did he see? Bhujangam, a snake. What kind of snake? A snake who was Mahakayam, who had a huge body. A snake who was Lo Maharshanam, a snake who would make the hair on your neck stand up. A very frightening snake. Where did he see the snake? Giri Durge, in the mountain, in a cave. On a mountainside, he saw this huge snake, and this snake who was Kayena Avritya Kandaram, Kandaram Samapannam. This Kandaram is another word for cave. So this cave was Samapannam. It was filled, Kayena Avritya, by the Kayena, by the body of this snake, Avritya, covering up the entire cave. So he sees the snake in a cave, but the entire cave is filled by the body of the snake. The snake is so huge, it fills this cave. And then Vaishampayana describes the snake. Guhakarena vaktrena, Guhakarena vaktrena, Chaturdanshrena rajata, Chaturdanshrena, Deeptakshenati tamrena, Deeptakshenati tam, Lehantam srikini muhuhu, Lehantam srikini muhuhu. So this cobra, the Ajagara, is guha akarena vaktrayena. It has a vaktra, a face, or more exactly a mouth, which is guha akarena. The mouth is as big as a cave. The snake is in the cave. The snake fills the cave, and when the mouth opens, that mouth looks like the entrance to a cave. And in that mouth are ch175-178 rajata. Shining in that mouth are 4 huge fangs. ch175. Not only are there 4 fangs and this huge cave-like mouth, but also deepta akshena. The snake has shining eyes, glowing eyes, deep, and glowing what color? Atitamrena, red, red glowing eyes, and the snake is lichantam. It is licking surikini, the corners of its mouth. It is licking muhuhu again and again. That tongue is going in and out, licking its mouth. So it's a very frightening scene. Sabhimam sahasabhyetya, sabhimam sahasabhye, pratagu kshurito brasham, pratagu kshurito brasham, jagraha jagaro graha, jagraha jagarogra, bhujayor hubhayor balat, bhujayor hubhayor balat, pratakuhu. It's a very odd word. I had to look it up. One of many words for snake. So that prataku, that snake. That snake, by the way, was kshuritaha. It was very hungry. Brasham kshuritaha, extremely hungry. And what did he do? Saha, he, the snake, sahasa, suddenly, abhyapeta bhimam, abhyetya, he approached. He approached to Bhimam. Very suddenly, he approached Bhima, and that snake, jagraha, that ajagaraha, you can see the word, that cobra, jagraha, he grasped Bhima. That graha is another word for snake. That which grasps is a graha. So that snake grasped Bhima, and here's you have to puzzle on this one. How did the snake grasp Bhima, Balat, with the strength, bhujayoho ubhayoho, with the strength of its 2 arms? Huh? This is a snake, a cobra. How can a cobra have 2 arms? I have no idea. And the commentary doesn't say anything about it. Maybe we can understand that the upper part of the snake was 1 arm and the lower part of the snake was the other arm. I think that would be a reasonable interpretation. So far as we know, cobras don't have arms. All right. Then, satejasvi tatatena, satejasvi tata, bhujagena vashikrataha, bhujagena vashikrataha, nachainam ashakadviraha, nachainam ashakadvira, katanchit pratibhaditum, katanchit pratibhaditum. Something odd going on here. Why? Saha Tejasvi, that mighty one, that Bhima, what did he do? Tata, in that way, Bhima was vashikritaha. He was controlled. He was overcome. He was subdued. Tena bhujagena, by that snake, by that cobra, Bhima was vashikrita. He was overcome. He was subdued. Wait a minute. That should sound strange to you because the way Bhima is portrayed, we've skipped over all kinds of sections, but if we saw all the preceding parts of the text, you'd see Bhima presented again and again as the one who's stronger than anyone and anything, including this giant cobra. So there's a question that's being formed here. How could Bhima be subdued by this Ajagara, by this cobra? And it says, though, that Viraha, that mighty, this is the third line at the end, Viraha, that mighty Bhima, na enam ashakat kinchit, he couldn't do anything, pratibadhitum, to break free from the grasp of that great snake. Very unusual. Bhima couldn't be conquered by anyone or anything, and yet this snake has him wrapped up in its coils, and Bhima is helpless. Why? We have to wait several verses. You'll find out. I don't want to give it away. But I'm setting up the question here. Bhima is powerful enough to break free of that snake. Why does he find himself helpless in this situation? We'll find out in just a few minutes. Then, Uvacha cha mahasarpam, uvacha cha maha, kamaya bruhi pannaga, kamaya bruhi, kastvam bhujaga shrestha, kastvam bhujaga shrestha, kim maya cha karishyasi, kim maya cha karishyasi. Uvacha cha mahasarpam. Uvacha, Bhima said, mahasarpam, to that giant cobra. What did he say? Kamaya, oh please. Pannaga, oh snake. Oh snake, kamaya bruhi. Please tell me. Please tell me what? Kahatvam. Who are you? Bhujaga shrestha. Oh greatest of snakes, tell me, who are you? Kim mayacha karishyasi. Kim karishyasi, what will you do, Maya, with me? What do you plan to do with me? Well, we already know that, right? He's hungry. and Bhima must look pretty tasty, I suppose. If you're a really hungry snake, Bhima would look pretty tasty. Sarpavacha, nahusho nama rajarsha, nahusho nama raj, vyaktam te shrotamagataha, vyaktam te shrotamag, dishtya tvam kshuritasyadya, dishtya tvam kshuritasyadya, Devar bhaksho mahabhuja, Devar bhaksho mahabhuja. So, having been asked, who are you and what do you plan to do with me? He explains. He says, Nahushaha nama. I am Nahusha. I am the Dev, I am the Rajarshi, I am the kingly sage, who was once known as Nahusha. Remember, Nahusha lived generations before the Pandavas, but apparently as the Ajagara, as a snake, he was able to live these many hundreds of years. He was able to live as a snake. And he says to Bhima, Te vyaktam shrot Tram agataha. Te, to you, Bhima, vyaktam shrotram agataha. You must have, this must have reached your ears, is a literal expression. What has reached your ears? The name Nahusha. So Nahusha was such a famous king, and so the snake explains, I am that Nahusha who's famous in the culture, and you must have heard my name. You must have heard that name Nahusha. And he says, so what were the two questions? First question is, who are you? Second question is, what are you going to do with me? So first question is finished, I am Nahusha. What is the second question? What are you going to do with me? Well, you know the answer. So he says, Tvam, we have to jump around. Tvam bhakshaha. You are food. Kshuditasya, for one who is hungry. For me, the one who is hungry, adya, now, you are food, dishtya devaihi. And this is devaihi dishtya, due to the blessings of the gods. Notice this is the typical thing of cobras. I don't know anything about cobras, but I'm told that they don't really go hunting. They just lay there and wait. And they lay there and wait for some critter to come close enough, and when a critter comes close enough, then they go and get them. So then when a critter comes close enough, according to Ajagara, that's considered the blessing of gods, of the gods. So dishtya devaihi, due to the blessings of the gods, you wandered too close to me, and therefore tvam bhakshaha, you are food, kshuditasya, for the hungry. You are food for me, the hungry snake. Mahabhuja, he addresses Bhima as, O mighty armed one, you are my food. That's the answer to his second question. Now he explains a little further about his curse. Soham shaparagastyasya, soham shaparagastyasya, brahmanan avamanyacha, brahmanan havaman, imam avastham apannaha, imam avastham ha, pashyadhaivam idam mama, pashyadhaivam. Saha aham shapat. Saha aham, I am the snake, is the sense. I have become this cobra, this snake. Why? Shapat, due to the curse. The curse of whom? Agastyasya, of Agastya. Due to the curse of Agastya, I have become this snake. Brahmanan avamanyacha, and also avamanya, because I have disrespected Brahmanan, those Brahmanas. Remember the story? The palanquin was being carried by these Brahmanas. Agastya was one of those Brahmanas, and Nahusha insulted all of the Brahmanas. So Brahmanan avamanya, having disrespected all of those Brahmanas, and due to the curse of Agastya, I have become the snake. And he says, Imam avastam apannaha. I am apannaha. I am possessed of Imam avastam, this condition of being a snake. I received, having insulted the Brahmanas and being cursed by Agastya. Then he says, Pashya, look, Daivam idam mama. Look at mama Daivam. Look at my fate. What? Look at my fate. He uses that word Daivam. And we had a long discussion of Daivam. What is Daivam? Daivam is a factor you don't control. Remember, the discussion was Prayatna and Daiva. Prayatna is what you do, what you control, your effort. Daiva are those factors that you don't control. In particular, your prarabdha karma, which is given by God. Therefore, it's called Daivam, since your prarabdha karma is given by Ishvara, the karma paladatta. Therefore, we call it Daivam. Daivam you have no control over. Prayatna you have complete control over. And so he says, look at me. I ended up as a snake. Look at my terrible fate. Do you see the problem there? So he just admitted in the first half of the verse that he himself insulted the Brahmanas. He brought that curse upon himself, did he not? He brought that curse upon himself, and then he denies any responsibility for it by blaming his fate. This is a great illustration of one of the most common abuses of the doctrine of karma. Let's talk about this problem a little bit. The doctrine of karma is an extremely powerful and helpful philosophy to deal with what happens in life. Like, for example, why do bad things happen to good people? We've had this discussion at great length. I don't want to go through the details of it. You've all understood the details of it. But here's what happens. Someone who doesn't understand the doctrine of karma properly, or someone who has a vested interest in twisting the teachings, in a vested interest in deliberately misinterpreting the teachings of karma, can use the doctrine of karma as, allow me to use the American English, to use the doctrine of karma as a cop-out. What is a cop-out? A lame excuse. What is his lame excuse? He says, I ended up as a snake, not due to my own actions, but due to daivam, due to fate. And by saying that, he's denying responsibility for his own actions. Indeed, it was his own actions that brought upon his curse. And you might say, okay, well, what's the big deal? So he just doesn't want to accept his culpability. It goes beyond that. And this is important. We know we deal with people who do this in life all the time. People who don't take responsibility. How many times have you heard, like at work or at home, someone who's clearly at fault, they say, it's not my fault. You've heard that so many times. When it's absolutely their fault, and then they say, it's not my fault, don't blame me. Now, the consequence of that is you have to go beyond the surface to see the consequence. There's an immediate consequence. The immediate consequence is your frustration because you're not taking responsibility. But there's a longer term consequence, and that is, if we make mistakes and we don't take responsibility for those mistakes, tell me, do we have an opportunity to learn from our mistakes if we don't accept that they're mistakes in the first place? Here's the point. We all make mistakes. You, me, every one of us. We've made a lot of mistakes. Hopefully, from every mistake we've made, we've learned something. And by learning from each and every one of our mistakes, we become better people. True. We've all made mistakes. We've learned from those mistakes. And the lessons we've learned from our mistakes truly has made us better people. But now look, if someone denies their mistakes, it's not my fault, then they also lose the opportunity to learn from those mistakes. They deny themselves the opportunity for growth that should take place as a result of snakes. So this, to deny responsibility for a mistake, it has not only an immediate consequence, but has this long-term consequence of denying the person the ability to grow. And everyone has their own excuse. So if you say it's not my fault, then whose fault is it, right? And it depends on the situation. Somebody will be ready to point the finger. It's not my fault, it's his fault, it's her fault. So that's one technique. But a pious Hindu has another possible out. What is it? A pious Hindu can say, it's not my fault, it's just my fate. It happened not because I chose it to happen. It happened because God made it happen. God save us from that kind of cop-out. What a horrible misuse of the doctrine of karma, to take this powerful spiritual teaching and to turn it into a lame excuse to cover up our own mistakes. It's a tragedy. So, and this is such a clear example. Nahusha's own actions resulted in his being cursed. But he refused to take responsibility for his own actions. So if it's not his actions, then what else could it be? It must be fate, daiva. It's in God's hands. It's not my fault. This is the cop-out. So we should all be on guard, both in our personal lives and also when we're dealing with others, to watch for this abuse of the doctrine of karma. Many of you were here in a meditation session where we commented on this very same point. We said that whatever situation we confront, we have no control over the situation. We can say the situation is due to karma. Fine. The situation, we can say, is 100% due to karma. No problem. But you have 100% control over how you respond to that situation. Here's the point. This is, and we call this feigned helplessness. You pretend to be helpless. You've seen people do that, right? People try. You have been manipulated by someone who pretended to be helpless for the sake of manipulating you. It's happened, right? It's a very common kind of manipulation. Someone pretends to be helpless. They've made a mistake and they say, I'm helpless. What can I do? The answer is, no one is helpless. We always have 100% control over our behavior, over our actions, over our decisions. So we can never say we're totally helpless. As we saw in the meditation session, you have no control at all over the situation. You have complete control over how you respond to that situation. You are never helpless, which is a good part, and it also implies you are always responsible. They go together, right? You are never helpless, therefore you are always responsible for your behavior. All right, enough said. So here we see a good example of the doctrine of karma being abused to create a cop-out where Nahusha admits, how silly. He actually admits that he disrespected the Brahmanas in the first breath. He admits he disrespected the Brahmanas. In his second breath, he says, it's my fate. The curse is my fate. But people are like that. Kind of blind to your own mistakes. What a tragedy if someone is blind to their own mistakes. Okay, enough. Nahusha continues. Yastu te vyahritan prashnan, yastu te vyahritan prashnan, pratibruyad visheshavita, pratibruyad vishesha, sattva mokshayata shapad, sattva mokshayata shapad. Iti mam abravid rashihi, iti mam abravid rashihi. Start in the last line. Iti, thus, mam abravit rashihi. Rishi, the rishi, referring to Agastya. What did Agastya do? Bravit mam. Abravit mam. He said to me. So the Rishi Agastya said to me, iti, thus. What did he say to me? Go to the second line. He said to me, pratibruyat visheshavit. He said, if a visheshavit, if a wise person, in particular, if a person who knows Dharma, if a visheshavit, remember, Nahusha had committed an act of adharma by kicking and abusing the Brahmanas. So here, Agastya says to Nahusha, this is at the time of the curse, at the time of Agastya cursing Nahusha. Agastya told Nahusha then, he says, if Visheshavit, if a wise person who knows Dharma, Pratibhruyat, if he responds, te vyahratan prashnan, if he responds to your questions. If a wise person who knows about Dharma responds to your questions about Dharma, then yaha, that person who responds to your questions about Dharma, now to the third line, saha, he, tvam mokshayata, he will free you, tvam, he will free you, shapat, from that curse. If you meet a wise person who knows about Dharma, and if that wise person answers your questions about Dharma in this way, Agastya tells Nahusha, in this way, O Nahusha, you will be freed from this curse of being a snake, which means you get to go back to being Nahusha. So who's going to free him from that curse? Visheshavit, a wise person who knows about Dharma. Notice Bhima is curled up in the snake, but Bhima is not widely known for his wisdom and knowledge of Dharma. He's known for his strength. On the other hand, who is known for his wisdom and knowledge of Dharma is certainly Yuddhishthira. So we would expect Yuddhishthira very shortly to enter the story. And that's what we'll see in just a couple of minutes. All right, continuing. Tamuvacha mahabahur, tamuvacha maha, bhimaseno bhujangamam, bhimaseno bhujang, nate kupya maha sarpa, nate kupya maha, nachatmanam vigarhaye, nachatmanam vigarhaye. Tamuvacha mahabahu. Mahabahu, the one with mighty arms, Bhima. What did he do? Uvacha, he said, tam bhujangamam, to that snake. Bhima said to that snake. And here Bhima is called Bhimasena. That's a common term, Bhimasena. Sena has nothing to do here with army. Words have different meanings. In fact, Sena is a feminine noun for army. That's not the word Sena here. Here the word Sena means body. Bhimasena, the one whose body would make you fearful. Bhima, that's what Bhima means. The one whose body was fearsome. Okay. So Bhimasena, Bhima said to that Bhujangamam, to that snake, what did he say to the snake? This is almost funny. Nakupyete mahasarpa. Mahasarpa, O great snake, nakupyete. I'm not angry with you. What? Huh? The snake has him wrapped up, and the snake's already told him, I'm going to eat you. And Bhima says, it's okay. I'm not angry with you. And nacha atmanam vigarhaye, nor am I upset atmanam, with myself, nor do I blame myself. I'm not angry with you. I don't blame you. After all, you're a snake, you're hungry, and you have a right to meals. And I don't blame you, nor do I blame myself for my stupidity in ending up in this situation. Wait a minute. What is this? I'm hoping this sounds really peculiar. Bhima is this mighty warrior. And now he's acting as if he's helpless. I'm helpless. I am your food. I am your meal. What can we do? I don't blame you. I don't blame me. What is Bhima going to say next? It's my fate. Oh. And that's what he says. He says, Daivam Purushakarena, Daivam Purushakar, Ko Nivartitam Arhati, Ko Nivartitam, Daivam Heva Param Manye, Daivam Heva Param, Purusharto Nirartakaha, Purusharto Nirartakaha. Daivam Purushakarena Kaha Nivartayatum Arhati. Kaha, who? Arhati is able. Nivartayatum, to avoid. Who is able to avoid Daivam, fate? Purushakarena, through one's own effort. Who is able to overcome fate through one's own effort? Remember, we spoke of extreme positions with regard to the doctrine of karma. So just to return to that, we said that the two factors that determine the outcome of any situation, one factor is prayatna, personal effort. Here it's called purushakara, means exactly the same thing. Purushakara is what is done by a person. Prayatna means effort done by a person. They're synonyms. One of the two factors is purushakara or prayatnam, your personal effort. The other factor is what you don't control, and we've been using the word daivam. And translating the word daivam as fate is a problem. We said daivam means that which comes from God. What comes from God is what? Your own karma pala. The results of your own prior actions come from Ishvara, the karma paladata. That's why it's called daivam. Point is it's not in your control. That's why we call it fate, but we had that long discussion. I don't want to return to that. We call it fate because it's not in your control, but let's understand, fate, we have to use a very refined meaning of fate. What do we mean by daivam? In fact, can we give up that word fate? It causes too much confusion. Daivam means that which comes from God. What comes from God? Ishvara's karma paladata, the giver of the fruits of your actions. What does he give you? The fruits of your actions. Actions done earlier in this life or in a prior life. That's what we call daiva. All right. So he says here that who, Bhima says, who can avoid the effects of daiva with one's own effort? So referring to both of those two factors, daiva and prayatna or purushakara. Now, in our discussion, we said that usually what happens is the outcome of a situation is partially due to prayatna and partially due to daiva. Remember how many times do I write this that picture on the board? But I'll do it one more time. In fact, I can still see the shadow of it up here from the meditation session. So I just go over the shadow and we'll get it back. So here we go. So you are swimming across the current of the river. You end up going at an angle. So the effort you expend in swimming across the current of the river is prayatna, also called purushakara in this verse. And then the current represents daiva. And we've talked about that so much. Daiva doesn't mean Ishvara's acting on a whim, giving you this or the other thing, but rather Ishvara as karma paladata, as the giver of the fruits of your actions, gives you the result of your past actions, and that's the second factor. Now, the reason I'm putting this back up on the board is we said there are extreme positions. One extreme possibility or position is if the current is very weak and if you are a very strong swimmer. Remember that possibility? If the current is very weak and you are a strong swimmer, you could actually swim upstream, could you not? Directly upstream, you could swim. That's an extreme position, and what we find in life, that extremes are unusual in life. Right? How often does it get up to 120 degrees in New Jersey? That's a very extreme position. How often does it go 20 below zero in New Jersey? It's possible, but those extreme conditions happen very, very rarely. So similarly with regard to karma, the extreme position of your karma being very weak. Karma means that which is coming through daiva. In fact, we could say, just for the sake of convenience, daiva means your karma. So there are times in life where your karma is very weak, and if your effort is very strong, then you can overcome anything. And what I'm saying is that's an extreme position, and the extreme positions in life are unusual. The common situation is it being a combination of both daiva, karma, and your effort. What about the other extreme position? The other extreme position, in fact we talked about in the meditation class, was when the force of your karma was overwhelming. Like if the current in the river is overwhelming. And simultaneously you're a weak swimmer. That's the other extreme position, where the current is overwhelming and you're a weak swimmer. Similarly in life, if your karma is overwhelming in its force and its strength, and if the amount of effort you can exercise is limited, you are a weak person. If you're a weak person and your karma is overwhelming, then that's the other extreme position. But what did we just observe about extreme positions? They're rare. It's rare for the temperature to touch 120 degrees or 20 degrees below zero. It's equally rare in life for there to be a situation where your karma is absolutely overwhelming and your effort is weak. But it is that extreme position that Bhima clings to. He ascribes to an extreme position. And an extreme position is not a balanced position. It's an incorrect position. Which is why Bhima says, Daivam Purushakarena ko nivartayati arhitum. Who is strong enough to overcome this karma? What is he doing? He's taking this extreme position. In fact, it becomes so clear in the second half. He says, Daivam eva param manye. Manye, I consider Daivam to be param. I consider Daiva, which means what? Karma. I consider the force of karma to be param, supreme, overwhelming. And also, purushartaha, what you accomplish through prayatna, human effort, purushartaha, is nirartakaha, useless. He says, I consider karma to be dominant, not just dominant, supreme. And I consider human effort to be futile, useless. Now, Bhima has taken this very extreme position, and it's a harmful position. Why is it a harmful position? It leads him to a state of helplessness. So he is already wrapped up in a snake's coil. The snake is ready to eat him. In the prior verse, he says, okay, snake, I don't blame you. I'm not angry at you. You're going to eat me. But it's okay. And why does he say it's okay? He says, this is my fate. Look at this. Bhima's misinterpretation of the doctrine of karma has led him to wrongly conclude that he's helpless. Bhima could easily break free of the snake's grasp. But due to his misinterpretation of the doctrine of karma, he fails to exercise any effort. This is the second example in this chapter of misinterpretation of the doctrine of karma leading to really bad consequences. We just got done saying, you're never helpless, ever. But then he misinterprets the doctrine of karma. He concludes he's helpless. He fails to make any effort. Wrong. Bhima is not helpless. You are never helpless. Why? You always have free will. Always, always have free will. But Bhima here has surrendered his free will due to his wrong conclusion about the doctrine of karma. So we really need to understand the doctrine of karma well and very carefully avoid the wrong conclusions. Nahusha made a wrong conclusion. Now Bhima makes a wrong conclusion. Before we move on, one final observation here. Suppose someone is reading the Mahabharata and doesn't know the principles of scriptural interpretation, and the person who's casually reading the Mahabharata reads the second half of this verse, Daivam eva param manye purushartha narartakaha, where Bhima says that destiny is supreme and human effort is useless, and the person concludes, hey, that's what the Mahabharata is teaching. Wait a minute. Is the Mahabharata teaching that? Not at all. The Mahabharata is telling the story in which Bhima has this conclusion. Aham manye, I think, I believe. I believe that Daiva is supreme. I believe that human effort is useless. And Bhima is wrong. But that comes in the context of this chapter. So just a warning, if you're going to read a scripture, you can't just take things out of context. If you take this verse out of context and conclude that Vyasa teaches in this chapter that Purushartha is useless and that everything is fate, that would be an absolutely wrong interpretation of the scripture. Okay, let's see just a little bit more of the story. We want to find out what happens. Does Bhima become Ajagara's lunch or not? We have to find out. And we return to the narration. Vaishampayano vacha, Vaishampayano Sadharma rajo medhavi, Sadharma rajo me Shankamano mahadbhayam, Shankamano mahadbhayam, Draupadim paripapracha, Draupadim paripapracha, Kvabhi mahiti bharata, Kvabhi mahiti. So, Vaishampayana continues his narration to King Janamejaya. Look at the last word, Bharata. O great one. He's addressing King Janamejaya. So what does he say to King Janamejaya? Saha Dharma Rajaha. I thought we were talking about Bhima. Change of context. Now we're talking about Dharma Raja, one of the names for Yuddhishthira. So Saha Dharma Rajaha, that Yuddhishthira, who is Medhavi, a very wise one. So that wise Yuddhishthira, Shankamanaha, he became very doubtful. And Mahadbhayam, filled with doubt, filled with fear, Shankamana, he became doubtful, and Mahadbhayam, fearful. And Paripapracha, he asked Draupadim, his wife Draupadi, he asked what? Kwa, where? Bhimaha yati. Where is Bhima? Bhima had been away for some time. Bhima, of course, is in the grasp of the snake, who is getting ready to eat Bhima. So here, Yuddhishthira says to Draupadi, where is Bhima? Satasya param hunniya, satasya param hunni, tasmad hevashramat prabhu, tasmad hevashramat prabhu, tadarsha prativim chinhar, tadarsha prativim chan, bhimasya parichinhitam, bhimasya parichinhitam. Good. Saha, he, Yuddhishthira, tasya param unniya, taking up, tasya param, taking up Bhima's, param here means path, taking up his path, following his route, the route that Bhima took, tasmat, from there, eva ashramat, from the ashrama, from the place where the Pandavas were staying. So in some ashrama, tasmat ashramat, from that ashrama where the Pandavas were staying, Prabhu means Lord, but it's referring to Yuddhishthira. So that Prabhu, that Yuddhishthira, tasya param unniya, following Bhima's route. And what did he do? The darsha, he saw. What did he see? Prativim, on the earth. What did he see? Parichinhitam. The earth was marked, parichinhitam was marked with Bhimasya chinhaihi, with Bhima's footprints. So he saw the footprints of Bhima in the earth. Bhima wasn't fat, but he was big. And big means heavy. Heavy means he would definitely leave footprints. So Yuddhishthira sees Bhima's footprints leaving the ashram, and he follows those footprints. Then what happens? Yudhishthirastam sarpa bhogabhiveshitam daitam bhrataram idam vachanam abravit. So Yuddhishthira, tam asadya, reaching tam, him, reaching Bhima, who was sarpa bhoga abhiveshtitam, wrapped up in, enveloped by. Bhoga here has an unusual meaning. Bhoga has a lot of different meanings. Here it means like curving. The bhoga oddly means curving here. So he saw Bhima, who was enveloped in the curves, bhoga, of the sarpa, in the coils of the snake would be a good translation. So he saw Bhima enveloped in the coils of the snake. His brother, who is Viram, Brataram Viram, his mighty, courageous brother, who is Daitam, looking very pitiable. His mighty, powerful brother looking Daitam, very miserable, very... And what a surprise, because Yuddhishthira knows that there's no snake that could possibly conquer Bhima. So Yuddhishthira is wondering what in the world is going on. He says, Viram Brataram, my mighty, courageous brother is looking miserable in the coils of the snake. And so to Bhima, Yuddhishthira, idam vachanam abravit. Yuddhishthira says this to Bhima. What does he say to Bhima? Kunti mata katamimam, kunti mata pratamimam, apadam tvamavaptavan, apadam tvamavap, kaschayam parvata bhoga, kaschayam parvata, pratimah pannagotamaha, pratita. So he says, Tvam Kunti Mataha. By the way, my translation is wrong here. Kunti Mataha is not addressing Bhima. Mata means maid. Kunti Mataha, one who is made from Kunti. Made from Kunti means her son. So Tvam Kunti Mataha, you, Bhima, the son of Kunti, Katham Imam Aparam Avaptavam. How did you get in English, how did you get into this mess? Aparam means catastrophe. How did this catastrophe befall you? How did you get into this mess? Kahacha, Yuddhishthira asks further, and also how Ayam Pannaga Uttamaha, I am this Pannaga Uttamaha, this most huge snake. Pannaga means snake. Uttama, the best of snakes, the largest snake. So who is this snake? The snake who is Parvata Abhoga Pratimaha. So the snake whose pratima, whose form, is abhoga, again with that meaning of curling and curving. Curving around you, but curving with the size of a parvata, like a mountain. How is this massive, mighty snake? Who is the snake that has you trapped in his coils? So he says, Yuddhishthira, seeing his mighty brother caught up in the coils of the snake, he says, how did you get into this mess, so to speak, and who is this mighty snake? And with that, I think we'll leave the rest of the story for next time. By the way, the story is pretty much done now. So now we get into this dialogue between Yuddhishthira and Nahusha in the form of the Ajagara, in the form of that cobra. We'll see that in our next class. All right. Some announcements. Tomorrow we have our program for teenagers at 11 o'clock. Also at 11 o'clock is our Gita at Work study group. You're invited. At 5 p.m. is our usual mindful awareness meditation session at 5 p.m. At 6:15 p.m. I conduct a question-answer session tomorrow, so please come and join us. The library will be open after class, and we'll conclude with our prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.